The massive diplomatic station floated silently in the neutral zone between three star systems. Its name was Unity Point, and it served as the meeting place for the most important gatherings in the known galaxy. Today, representatives from 12 different alien species had arrived for the Sector Trade Summit, an event that happened only once every 10 years. Ambassador Tom Chen adjusted his simple black uniform as he stepped out of the human shuttle. At 35 years old, Tom had already spent 8 years representing humanity in various diplomatic missions. He was not the loudest voice in any room, nor the most imposing figure. Tom stood at average height with dark hair and calm brown eyes that observed everything carefully. What made Tom special was his ability to listen and understand. The human delegation was small compared to others. Just Tom, his assistant David Park, cultural advisor Sarah Mills, and 2 security officers, Robert Yang and Anna Costa. They walked through the grand entrance of Unity Point, their footsteps echoing in the vast corridor made of transparent aluminum that showed the stars beyond. The Zalari delegation had arrived 3 days early, as was their custom. They believed in displaying their importance through early arrival and taking the best quarters. The Zalari Empire controlled 47 star systems and had been traveling through space for over 3,000 years. They stood 8 feet tall with silver skin that seemed to shimmer in different lights. Their most distinctive feature was their 4 arms, each one capable of independent movement and thought. Prince Korvax walked through Unity Point like he owned it. At 19 years old in Zalari years, which translated to roughly the same in human years, he was the youngest member of their royal family to ever attend such an important summit. His father, Emperor Zorvak, had remained on their homeworld, sending his son as a test of his diplomatic abilities. The prince wore robes of deep purple with gold threading that formed complex patterns. Each of his 4 arms bore different ceremonial bracelets that indicated his rank, his achievements, and his bloodline. His entourage consisted of 20 guards, 10 advisors, and various servants who ensured his every need was met. Immediately, Tom had studied the prince's profile during the journey to Unity Point. Korvax had been raised to believe in Zalari superiority from birth. His teachers had filled his head with stories of how the Zalari had achieved faster-than-light travel when humans were still living in caves, how they had mapped the stars when Earth's inhabitants hadn't even discovered fire. These stories were partly true, but they ignored the contributions and growth of younger species. The main conference hall could hold 500 beings comfortably, with adjustable atmosphere zones for different species' needs. The methane breathers from Gax Prime had their own sealed section. The aquatic representatives from the coral worlds had tanks that allowed them to float at eye level with everyone else. The silicon-based Krillians required temperatures that would freeze water instantly, so their section was separated by energy fields. Humans needed no special accommodations. They could breathe the standard oxygen-nitrogen mix that 60% of the galaxy used. They could tolerate the standard temperature and gravity settings. This adaptability was something Tom had always seen as a strength, though many alien species saw it as proof that humans were boringly average. The first 2 days of the summit proceeded smoothly. Trade routes were discussed, mineral rights were negotiated, and agricultural exchanges were planned. Tom participated actively but respectfully, never pushing too hard but ensuring humanity's interests were represented. He noticed Prince Korvax watching the human delegation with barely concealed amusement several times. On the morning of the 3rd day, the formal introductions began. This was a ceremonial tradition where each delegation's leader would be formally presented to every other leader. It was considered a crucial part of diplomatic protocol, especially for species meeting for the first time. Tom had already been introduced to 8 other delegations when his turn came to meet Prince Korvax. The prince stood in the center of his entourage, his 4 arms crossed in what Tom recognized as a Zalari gesture of superiority. Ambassador Thren of the Vargan Federation performed the introduction. Prince Korvax of the Zalari Empire. "May I present Ambassador Tom Chen of the United Earth Systems," Thren said in his melodious voice. Tom stepped forward and offered the traditional human handshake with his right hand, as was customary when meeting new contacts. The prince looked at the extended hand as if Tom had offered him garbage. "So this is a human," Prince Korvax said loudly, ensuring everyone in the vicinity could hear. "I have read about your species. Barely 200 years in space. Still fighting among yourselves on your homeworld? Still dying from diseases that we cured millennia ago? Tom kept his hand extended, his face neutral. He had encountered dismissive attitudes before, though rarely so blatant. The prince continued, his voice dripping with disdain. Look at them, everyone. 2 arms only, too. How do they accomplish anything? My youngest servant has 4 arms, and even she is more capable than their greatest warriors. A few delegates from other species shifted uncomfortably. The Vargans, who also had 2 arms, looked particularly offended. But none spoke up against the prince. Your species lives, 80 of your years if you're fortunate? Korvax laughed, a sound like crystal breaking. I will live for 600 years. My father has already lived for 400. In the time it takes one Zilari to master basic astronomy, 5 generations of humans have lived and died like insects. Tom slowly lowered his unshaken hand. David Park, standing behind him, tensed visibly. Sarah Mills was taking notes on her datapad, her face carefully controlled. The security officers remained at attention, but their eyes had hardened. And they call themselves intelligent, the prince continued, now walking a circle around Tom, examining him like a specimen. They discovered nuclear power and nearly destroyed themselves with it. They discovered artificial intelligence and had to shut it down 3 times because they couldn't control it. They are children playing with tools they don't understand. Ambassador Rook from the Centauri Collective spoke up. Prince Korvax, perhaps we should continue with the introductions. No, I am not finished, the prince declared. Everyone here needs to understand what we are dealing with. These humans spread across the galaxy like a virus, colonizing 20 systems in mere decades, not through superior technology or wisdom, but through reckless breeding and desperate expansion. They are clever animals, nothing more. The hall had gone completely silent. Even the constant hum of the air recyclers seemed to pause. Over 100 beings from various species watched to see how the human ambassador would respond to such public humiliation. Prince Korvax raised all 4 of his arms dramatically. They have contributed nothing original to galactic civilization. Their ships use Vargan engine designs. Their weapons are modified Krillian technology. Their medical equipment is borrowed from the Centauri. They are scavengers, taking the accomplishments of their betters and claiming participation in our greatness. He turned to face Tom directly, looking down at the human from his 8-foot height. Tell me, Ambassador Chen, what exactly have humans created that the galaxy actually needs? What great innovation have you brought to our ancient civilizations? You stumbled upon a derelict Vargan probe that taught you faster than light travel, and you think this makes you our equals? Tom looked up at the prince, meeting his 6 eyes calmly. The human ambassador's expression remained completely neutral, showing neither anger nor shame. He simply stood there, absorbing every word without reaction. Your people still believe in superstitions, Korvax pressed on. You have 100 different governments on one planet. You can't even agree among yourselves. Yet you dare to sit at tables where empires that have existed for thousands of years make decisions about the galaxy's future. The prince's advisors were beginning to look uncomfortable. One of them, an older Zilari with graying skin, stepped forward slightly as if to intervene, but Korvax waved him back with one of his lower arms. I have studied your history, human. Your species' greatest accomplishments have been learning not to kill each other quite as often. You celebrate achieving what every other civilized species considered basic behavior 10,000 years ago. You are primitives who learned to wear clothing and fly ships, but underneath, you are still the same violent apes who fought over water and food on your single planet. Several human staff members at various positions throughout the hall had stopped their work to listen. Technicians, translators, maintenance personnel, and support staff all watched their ambassador stand silently under the barrage of insults. Your emotional responses are uncontrolled, the prince added. You make decisions based on feelings rather than logic. You form attachments to inefficient practices simply because of tradition. You even keep animals as companions for emotional support. What advanced species needs emotional support from lower life forms? Tom remained silent, his breathing steady and controlled. His hands hung relaxed at his sides. His expression had not changed once during the entire speech. Prince Korvax seemed frustrated by the lack of response. He had clearly expected anger, defense, or at least some visible discomfort. Instead, Tom simply stood there looking at him with those calm brown eyes. And the worst part, the prince said, his voice rising to ensure everyone heard, is that you genuinely believe you belong here. You think that because you learned to copy our technology and follow our rules, you deserve respect. You are like children who learn to repeat words without understanding their meaning, mimicking the adults and expecting praise. He gestured dismissively, with all four arms. Humans are a temporary species. In 1,000 years, when the Zalari Empire still guides the galaxy, your civilization will be a footnote in history. A brief moment when clever animals reached beyond their grasp and had to be tolerated by their betters. The prince stepped back, clearly finished with his speech. The entire hall waited for Tom's response. Some expected him to defend humanity's achievements. Others thought he might challenge the prince to a duel, as was customary in some cultures when honor was questioned. A few wondered if he would simply accept the insults as a weaker species acknowledging its place. Tom Chen did none of these things. Instead, he looked at Prince Korvax for exactly 3 seconds. Then, without a word, without a gesture, without any expression of emotion, he turned around and began walking toward the exit. The silence in the hall became deafening. David Park glanced at Sarah Mills in confusion, then both hurried to follow their ambassador. The security officers fell into step behind them. The entire human delegation walked through the hall, their footsteps the only sound. "Where are you going?" Prince Korvax called out, genuine bewilderment in his voice.
"I am not finished speaking to you."
Tom did not turn around. He did not slow down. He simply continued walking. Ambassador Thren of the Vargans stepped forward. "Ambassador Chen, the summit is not concluded. There are 3 more days of negotiations." Tom reached the door and passed through it without acknowledging anyone. "This is cowardice," Prince Korvax shouted. "You prove my point. Humans cannot face truth. They run when confronted with their inadequacy." But Tom was already gone and the human delegation with him. The remaining delegates stood in shocked confusion. In the 3,000-year history of the Sector Trade Summit, no delegation had ever simply walked out. There were protocols for disputes, procedures for handling insults, and formal methods for addressing grievances. But there was no precedent for a delegation leaving without a word. Within an hour, the human shuttle had departed Unity Point. Within 2 hours, every human staff member on the station had quietly submitted requests for immediate leave, citing personal reasons. By the end of the day, Unity Point found itself without a single human presence for the first time in 50 years. Prince Korvax declared it a victory. He told everyone who would listen that he had exposed human weakness and driven them away with truth. His advisors congratulated him, though some did so with less enthusiasm than others. The older advisor who had tried to intervene earlier said nothing at all. Ambassador Rook of the Centauri Collective approached the Vargan delegation. "This is unprecedented. What do we do now?" Thren's fur rippled with uncertainty. "We continue, I suppose. The summit must proceed." But as the day ended and delegates retired to their quarters, many found themselves thinking about Tom Chen's silent departure. There had been something unsettling about it, not the explosive anger they might have expected, not the stammering defense of humanity's honor, but simply nothing. A man insulted in front of the entire diplomatic community had simply turned and walked away as if the prince's words meant nothing at all. That night, Prince Korvax celebrated with his entourage. He had shown the galaxy that humans were weak, he declared. He had put them in their place. His first major diplomatic action had been a complete success. He did not notice that several of his own advisors exchanged worried glances when they thought he wasn't looking. He did not see the messages being sent between various delegations, all asking the same question. What would the humans do now? And he certainly did not know that Tom Chen, aboard his shuttle heading back to Earth, had not spoken a single word since leaving the conference hall. David Park and Sarah Mills had tried to ask him about his plan, about what came next, but Tom had simply looked out at the stars and remained silent. The summit would continue for 3 more days. Trade agreements would be discussed. Treaties would be negotiated, but something had changed in that hall when Tom Chen walked away without a word, and everyone knew it. They just didn't know what it meant yet. Ambassador Thren of the Vargan Federation was in the middle of presenting a trade proposal when his translator suddenly produced a series of squeaks and whistles instead of words. The Krillian delegate's translator responded with what sounded like ancient Vargan poetry. Within minutes, every universal translator in the conference hall was malfunctioning. "Technical difficulties," Prince Korvax announced with a wave of his upper right arm. "Our engineers will fix this momentarily." But the engineers could not fix it. The translation systems, which had worked perfectly for 50 years, seemed to have developed multiple errors simultaneously. Delegates who spoke multiple languages tried to communicate directly, but misunderstandings quickly arose. The GAX Prime representative accidentally insulted the Coral World ambassador due to a mispronounced word. The silicon-based beings couldn't make themselves understood at all. By the end of the first day without humans, 17 minor diplomatic incidents had occurred due to translation errors. The second problem appeared during the evening meal cycle. The food synthesizers, programmed to create specific nutritional requirements for each species, began producing meals that were slightly wrong, not dangerous but uncomfortable. The Zalari received food with too much sodium. The Vargans got meals lacking essential proteins. The Centauri Collective's food was the wrong temperature. These are minor technical issues, Prince Korvax insisted to his increasingly frustrated father over video communication. Emperor Zorvak, watching from the Zalari homeworld, did not seem convinced. Minor issues that began the moment you drove away the human delegation, the Emperor observed. Coincidence, Korvax replied. Old systems fail. We will repair them. But the Zalari engineers could not repair them. Every time they fixed one problem, two more appeared. The climate control began fluctuating, making the conference halls uncomfortable for everyone. The lighting systems developed an annoying flicker that gave several species headaches. The gravity generators in the recreation areas started producing micro-fluctuations that made walking difficult. On the second day, Ambassador Rook of the Centauri Collective made a disturbing discovery. She had been reviewing station records when she noticed something odd. For the past 50 years, Unity Point's maintenance logs showed thousands of small repairs and updates. System patches, software updates, hardware replacements, efficiency improvements, all of them had been signed off by human technicians. Look at this, Rook told Thren, showing him a datapad. Every major system on this station has human fingerprints on it. Not just repairs, but improvements. The translation algorithm that allows 30 different species to communicate seamlessly. Updated by a human programmer named Jun Nakamura 17 years ago. The food synthesizer's ability to perfectly match nutritional needs. Refined by human nutritionist Omar Hassan 23 years ago. Thren's fur stood on end as he reviewed the data. The climate control system that maintains perfect balance between different atmospheric needs. Redesigned by human engineer Priya Patel 8 years ago, Rook confirmed. Before that, we had to wear environmental suits in common areas. They brought their findings to the other delegates, carefully avoiding Prince Korvax, who was busy shouting at his engineers to fix the growing list of problems. The Krillian representative, despite the communication difficulties, managed to convey that their own ships had been receiving regular maintenance from human dock workers. The GAX Prime delegate indicated through gestures that human scientists had helped them solve a plague that had threatened their colonies. How did we not know this? Asked the Coral World ambassador through a barely functioning translator. The answer came from an unexpected source. Admiral Vec of the Zalari military, one of Prince Korvax's own advisors, stepped forward. He was the older Zalari who had tried to intervene during the prince's insult of Tom Chen. We knew, Vec said simply. Those of us who pay attention knew. Humans have been quietly keeping everything running for decades. They never asked for credit. They never demanded recognition. They simply fixed things. Why? Thren asked. Because that is what humans do, Vec replied. They see a problem and they solve it. They don't care if the broken system belongs to a species that looks down on them. They fix it anyway. On the morning of the third day, Unity Point experienced its first serious crisis. The main power grid suffered a cascade failure. Backup systems kicked in, but they were only designed to last 72 hours. Without main power, the station would have to be evacuated. Prince Korvax finally began to understand the severity of the situation. He commanded his best engineers to fix the power grid. They worked for 12 hours straight but couldn't identify the problem. The system was too complex with too many interconnected parts that had been modified over the years. The modifications, his chief engineer reported, they are not in our original blueprints. Someone has been improving and updating this system for decades, adding redundancies and efficiency boosters. We don't understand how it all works anymore. It was then that a small shuttle arrived at Unity Point. Not a diplomatic vessel, but a simple transport carrying a single passenger. Ambassador Maria Santos, Tom Chen's replacement, walked into the conference hall where all the delegates had gathered for an emergency meeting. Maria was 60 years old with silver hair and kind eyes. She had served as humanities ambassador to the Vargan Federation for 15 years before this assignment. She carried herself with quiet dignity, wearing the same simple black uniform that Tom had worn. "Greetings, distinguished delegates," Maria said, her voice calm and clear despite the malfunctioning translators. She spoke in Galactic Standard, which most delegates understood even without translation. "I am here to discuss the current situation. The situation you humans created," Prince Korvax accused, pointing at her with two of his arms. "You sabotaged our systems." Maria shook her head. "We did not sabotage anything, Your Highness. We simply stopped maintaining systems that we have been quietly supporting for 50 years. She produced a holographic projector and displayed a vast network diagram. This is Unity Point's actual technical architecture. The blue sections are original Zalari design from 200 years ago. The green sections are Vargan additions from 150 years ago. The yellow sections are Centauri improvements from 100 years ago. The diagram was mostly blue, green, and yellow as expected. But then Maria touched a control, and red sections appeared throughout the entire network, connecting and supporting everything else. The red sections, Maria explained, are human additions, modifications, and improvements made over the last 50 years. As you can see, they are everywhere. The delegates stared in shock. The red sections were like blood vessels throughout the entire system, touching every crucial component. When Ambassador Chen left, Maria continued, every human technician, engineer, programmer, and support specialist in this sector simultaneously took personal leave. We did not break anything. We simply stopped fixing the things that constantly break. "That's impossible," Prince Korvax protested. "Our systems are perfect. Zalari engineering doesn't break." Maria smiled sadly. "Your Highness, Zalari engineering is 3,000 years old. It was magnificent for its time, but time moves forward. Systems age. Technology evolves. The galaxy has grown more complex. Your original systems cannot handle the demands of 12 species trying to communicate and coexist." She showed another image. "This is the translation algorithm your people designed. It could handle 5 languages simultaneously. Very impressive 3,000 years ago. But now we need to translate between 30 languages in real time, accounting for cultural context, emotional undertones, and technical terminology that didn't exist when your algorithm was created. So humans updated it," Admiral Vec said quietly. "We updated everything," Maria confirmed. "Not because we wanted glory, but because it needed to be done. When the Vargans couldn't figure out why their engines were failing, human engineers spent months diagnosing the problem and creating a fix. When the Centauri medical equipment couldn't handle certain radiation types, human scientists developed new shielding. When the Krillians needed help adapting their technology to warmer climates, humans figured it out." She paused, looking directly at Prince Korvax. "We never asked for thanks. We never demanded recognition. We just helped because that's what neighbors do." "But why hide it?" Thren asked. "We didn't hide it," Maria replied. "We simply didn't advertise it. Every repair, every improvement, every update was logged and filed properly. Anyone who looked could see our contributions. But most species were too proud to look, too certain of their own superiority to notice. Who was actually keeping the lights on?" The lights in the conference hall flickered as if to emphasize her point. "You have 48 hours of backup power remaining," Maria stated. "The main power grid needs 17 different repairs in a specific sequence, or it will fail completely. Your food synthesizers need new programming to handle the biological diversity of modern species. The climate control needs constant adjustment to maintain balance. The gravity generators need daily calibration." "Then fix it," Prince Korvax demanded. "No," Maria said simply. The word hung in the air like a challenge. "Humanity has been the galaxy's unpaid maintenance crew for 50 years, Maria continued. "We've solved problems, prevented disasters, and kept everyone comfortable, while being told we were primitive, worthless, and inferior. Ambassador Chen's patience finally ran out when you, Prince Korvax, publicly humiliated him and our entire species." "I spoke only truth," the prince insisted. "You spoke from ignorance," Maria corrected. "You said humans contributed nothing original to galactic civilization. Let me show you something." The hologram changed to show a medical diagram. "This is the cure for Andorian fever that saved 12 billion Vargan lives 40 years ago. Developed by human researchers. The image changed. This is the agricultural technique that ended famine in the outer colonies. Created by human farmers, another change. This is the communication protocol that allows instant messaging across thousands of light years. Invented by human programmers. Image after image appeared, each showing a human innovation that had saved lives, prevented wars, or improved civilization. You said we were scavengers, Maria continued. But we didn't take your technology. We improved it. We made it work better. We shared our improvements freely, without patents or restrictions. When your people were dying from diseases, we didn't charge for cures. When your colonies were starving, we didn't demand payment for food production techniques. Admiral Vex stepped forward. Your Highness, I tried to warn you. I have worked with humans for 30 years. They are not what you think. Prince Korvax turned on his advisor. You knew about this? Everyone who actually works with humans knows, Vex replied. The military knows because human strategists have prevented 3 wars through careful negotiation. The scientists know because human researchers share data freely. The merchants know because human traders are scrupulously fair. Only the politicians and royalty isolated in their palaces believe the old stereotypes. The station shuddered slightly as another system began to fail. What do you want? Prince Korvax asked Maria, his voice much quieter now. Respect, Maria answered. Not superiority, not special treatment, just basic respect. Acknowledge humans as equals in this galactic community. Apologize for your insults, and promise to judge species by their actions, not their age or appearance. And if I refuse? Maria shrugged. Then humanity will focus on helping species who appreciate our contributions. We have offers from the Vargans, the Centauri, and 7 other civilizations to relocate our technical teams. We don't need to stay where we're not wanted, but Unity Point will fail. Yes, Maria agreed. And you'll build another station. It will take you 20 years and cost tremendous resources, but you'll manage. Of course, without human improvements, it will only function at 60% efficiency. And when it starts breaking down in 50 years, you'll have to figure out how to fix it yourselves. Prince Korvax looked around the room. Every delegate was watching him. His own advisors were looking at him with expressions that suggested he had better choose wisely. At that moment, Emperor Zorvak's image appeared on the main screen. The Emperor had been watching the entire exchange. My son, the Emperor said, you have learned a valuable lesson today. True strength is not in having 4 arms or living for centuries. True strength is in lifting others up without seeking praise. The humans have shown more nobility in their silence than we have shown in our boasting. The Emperor stood from his throne, something he rarely did during communications. Ambassador Santos, on behalf of the Zalari Empire, I apologize for my son's behavior. Humanity has proven itself not just our equal, but in many ways our superior. You help without demanding gratitude. You improve without claiming ownership. You solve problems without seeking glory. He looked at his son. Korvax, you will apologize. You will learn. And you will spend the next year working alongside human engineers to understand what true service means. Prince Korvax's silver skin darkened with embarrassment, but he turned to Maria and bowed, a gesture of deep respect in Zalari culture. Ambassador Santos, I apologize. I spoke from ignorance and arrogance. Humanity deserves not just a seat at this table, but our gratitude for keeping the table standing. Maria nodded graciously. Apology accepted, Your Highness. We all have much to learn from each other. She touched her communicator. This is Ambassador Santos to all human technical personnel. You are cleared to return to duty. Within hours, human technicians began arriving at Unity Point. They worked without fanfare, fixing systems, updating programs, and restoring functionality. They didn't boast or complain. They simply did what needed to be done. Tom Chen returned on the 4th day of the summit. He entered the conference hall quietly, taking his seat as if nothing had happened. Prince Korvax immediately stood and crossed the room to him. Ambassador Chen, the prince said loud enough for all to hear, I owe you a personal apology. My words were cruel and wrong. You showed more dignity in your silence than I showed in my speech. I hope you will accept my apology and perhaps even my friendship. Tom stood and, for the first time since they'd met, smiled slightly. Your Highness, humans have a saying, actions speak louder than words. You've apologized with words. Now show me with actions that you've truly learned. Over the following months, Prince Korvax did exactly that. He worked alongside human engineers, learning not just their technical skills but their philosophy of service. He discovered that humans' primitive emotional responses included empathy, compassion, and an incredible capacity for forgiveness. Their short lifespans meant they worked with urgency and purpose, accomplishing more in decades than some species did in centuries. The prince learned that human superstitions often contained deep wisdom about community and morality. Their multiple governments meant they understood diversity and compromise. Their keeping of animal companions showed their capacity for love and responsibility. Most importantly, Korvax learned that walking away from an insult without a word wasn't weakness. It was the ultimate strength, the confidence of knowing one's worth without needing to prove it through conflict. A year later, at the next gathering, Prince Korvax stood before the assembly and gave a different speech. He spoke of humanity's contributions, their quiet dignity, and their invaluable role in galactic civilization. He ended with words that would be remembered for generations. The measure of a species is not in how long they live or how many arms they have. It is not in the age of their civilization or the size of their empire. The measure of a species is in how they treat others when no one is watching, how they help without seeking reward, and how they face insults with dignity rather than violence. By this measure, humanity stands taller than us all. Tom Chen was in the audience that day. When the prince finished speaking, Tom did something he hadn't done at their first meeting. He stood and extended his hand. This time, Prince Korvax took it gladly, understanding finally that sometimes the greatest strength is shown not in grand gestures or angry words, but in simply turning and walking away. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Never underestimate the quiet ones. They might just be the ones keeping everything running.